we're going to branch out and do something a little different. Haven't done this before. I'm going to tell you why I don't recommend this book. As you can see, it's called Old Testament Parallels, and there are two authors. Now, this book basically asserts that it's making parallels between biblical texts from the Old Testament and other non-biblical ancient Near Eastern texts and showing the parallels between them. It is quite the repository of English translations of sections of ancient Near Eastern texts. So in one sense, it's a little bit handy. I mentioned there's two authors. These translations come from numerous sources across numerous languages. It wasn't clear to me, trying to find it in here, who did the translations. Was it just these two people? If so, that's a pretty heroic amount of translating from a lot of different languages. And I question, are these two truly capable of accurately translating all of those languages? If you know who did the translation, if I missed it in here and it says it, please tell me in the comments. I couldn't find that. But if it's just these two, it automatically kind of raises a flag. It's like, hey, can I really trust these translations? Because that's a lot of languages you're claiming to be proficient in. At the back, it lists all of the biblical texts and all the other ancient Near Eastern texts and shows the parallels and what categories they fall into. And I went through and hand counted all of them. 42 of them are from the Apocrypha, and actually a couple dozen are from the New Testament, not the Old Testament, despite the title Old Testament Parallels. If you reduce it down without the apocryphal ones to the canonical citations, 1,196 Bible passages are cited, and 1,560 parallels are noted, right? Because there can be multiple parallels within a single text. Now, there are 6 categories that it gives for the types of parallels, and this is where it really starts to fall apart. You and I probably think of a parallel as two things running alongside each other. In other words, two lines, and lines require 2 points each to form a line segment. A lot of these lack that. Let me explain. Category 1 are genre parallels. It cites, for example, creation story, flood story, law, or teaching. 231 of them fall into category 1. That's 19% of them. That probably sounds like those might really legitimately be parallels. Category 2, however, are vocabulary parallels. This is direct words or phrases that are shared in common between a Bible passage and an ancient Near Eastern text. For example, the midwives in Exodus, they cite an ancient Near Eastern text that just mentions midwives. The stories have nothing in common except they happen to mention midwives. That's not parallelism. That's coincidence. That's convergence, where they happen to share one commonality. Imagine every time any ancient Near Eastern text mentions Egypt. Are all of those biblical parallels just because they happen to mention a nation that was prominent at the time? 763, or 62% of these supposed parallels, are that category 2, where they just share a word or phrase. So that's not even a parallelism. So we've reduced it down from 1,560 by 763. So what, approximately 800. So you just cut it in half. That's telling. Category 3 are motif parallels, so barren wife, greed, widows, orphans. That's 12% of them. And so that just means they happen to share a theme or something. That's, again, they could be totally divergent and unrelated, but converge on this one kind of theme or motif. 4 are social scientific parallels, anthropomorphisms or taboos. So like think about Balaam's donkey talking. If you have another talking animal elsewhere, suddenly that's a biblical parallel in their minds. That's 10% of them. Plot parallels, where similar actions in both texts take place. This is where you and I would probably most likely think of parallelism. The stories are following similar lines through time across the text. That's 23% of them. So only 23% really are firmly parallel. And then category 6 are historical parallels, where there are names, events, or places. That's 5.6% of them. Again, mentioning Egypt. Mentioning David or Israel on an engraving somewhere suddenly is a biblical parallel. And then the specific examples within these are often pretty much absurd. So the text gives a parallel between Marduk approaching Tiamat for battle as parallel to Genesis 31, where Jacob approaches Laban to establish a covenant. I mean, these have nothing to do with each other at all. This isn't parallelism. That's grasping at straws. That's an act of desperation. So this book is way overblown. There's other issues in it that, to me, call into question the author's objectivity and their ability to interpret what they're dealing with. It's really bloated and overblown. I cannot recommend this text.